Hey guys, it's Timothy here. Looking at more of these Kaladesh spoilers and quite a few today. Go and let you guys know that anything that came out after midnight last night is something I haven't seen yet, and these include the last couple days because I was quite busy yesterday. But last one I viewed was this guy up here, aptly named the Demon of Dark Schemes, not the Demon of Shady Schemes as it was translated originally. But card is really sweet. If you didn't see it before, it's awesome. But we're going to start with Gearhulk Orrery, and again, I've seen a couple of these already, so when I get into today's spoilers, they'll be completely new for me as well, so I'll have to read through them and give you like a snap opinion about them. But starting with Gearhulk Orrery, that's 4 mana for an artifact that says each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turns, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. So I'm not a huge fan of symmetrical effects when it comes to limited. I would rather somebody else play this sort of card and I get the benefit of it, so I'm not using my turn to play something that benefits everybody. This is really good if you're trying to ramp. It just keeps the game going. It keeps card flow going. So people are going to be hitting land drops. People are going to be playing all of their late game stuff, and people are going to be drawing cards. So once this hits the field, the name of the game is empty your hand as soon as possible so you can just keep refilling it. Kind of like Bedlam Reveler, where your goal is to just cast a flurry of spells, play the Reveler, and then refill your hand so that you can keep going. I also potentially see this in Standard, and I think a card that has a lot of potential in Standard but really hasn't broken out is a Lupine Prototype. If you really build around it with cards like Noose Constrictor or Olivia's Dragoons, something that can repeatedly discard and make sure your hand is empty, then that seems really good. So with the Orrery, you can empty your hand quite quickly with a card like Noose Constrictor when you're ready to start attacking with your prototypes, and then make sure you're hitting your land drops and you draw those 3 cards. Any of those cards that are useful and you can play, put them on the battlefield. The rest you pitch to Noose Constrictor, and then you draw 3 more cards every time. So use one of those discard outlets to make sure you're always drawing 3 fresh cards per turn. Make sure you're always hitting your land drops, and make sure you're always hitting relevant stuff. The problem is it's a 4 mana artifact, doesn't do anything right away. Well, might hit you an additional land, and those prototypes are 2 mana, so they want to be attacking by turn 3. But if you don't see yourself hitting this Orrery by turn 4, you can always pitch it to the Noose Constrictor or Dragoon or whatever discard outlet you're using anyway, and you would probably only play maybe one of these in the deck, so it's not very likely that you would have it in your opening hand anyway. But I think it has potential, and definitely going to see playing EDH. They call these group hug cards, where you play a card that has the same effect for everyone, some positive effect for everyone, like Horn of Greed and Conspiracy, or the Kami of the Crescent Moon, things like that everybody gets some sort of benefit off of it. So it'll definitely see play in somebody's EDH deck. Borborygmos maybe, Gitrog Monster, anything that cares about land drops or drawing cards is going to like it. Nekuzar seems pretty good. This card right here, Harmonicon, is absolutely absurd and probably the most exciting card out of the set for me so far due to EDH. But the way it's worded, it's a 4 mana artifact. I believe it's just a rare, and it says if an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So essentially, ETB triggers trigger twice, or sometimes there are other type of abilities that trigger when a creature enters. So just an example off the top of my head, something like Impact Tremors, which says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, your opponent takes a damage. That would trigger twice anytime a creature enters the battlefield under your control. But the main use of this is going to be when a creature or artifact has an ETB trigger, it will trigger twice. And there are a lot of people arguing in the comments about, oh no, this won't make creatures trigger their own abilities, but it will. It is worded so that a creature coming down will have its own ability triggered twice. So your reflector mages are double reflector mages, and pretty much anything you can think of that says enter the battlefield on it is great. And this immediately screams EDH. I think it is insane in EDH. I could sit here and list examples over and over again, but like anything with evoke, so your Shriek Mauls and your Mold Drifters get double evoke triggers, or double ETB triggers. Your Titans, your Grave Titans get you 4 zombies. Your Sun Titans get you 2 cards. Your Prosh gives you double Kobolds. Daredevil gives you double taps on entering the battlefield. Like, I could go on. Anything that says enter the battlefield is insane with Harmonicon. Like, this card is really, really good. And Standard, I don't think it was built with Standard in mind, but Standard does have some decent enter the battlefield triggers. Reflector Mage is really the only one that comes to mind right now. And I guess Spell Queller if you're in like a counter war or something like that, but that doesn't seem super likely. Rattle Chains can give you double counters. Nebelgast Herald being double taps or something like that for any spirit. Like that's pretty good. So I don't know. I'll have to see if it makes it or breaks it in other constructed formats. But EDH is just a powerhouse. Like it's insane in EDH, and I don't think there's any arguing with that. The 5 lands here. These are the second half of the. They call them the Fastlands from Scars of Mirrodin, and they're fantastic. So you have Inspire, Advantage, Concealed Courtyard. Just click them real quick so you can see them while I'm talking about them. Spire Bluff Canal is the red-blue one, but we've had the other half of the cycle this entire time since Scars of Mirrodin, and they're fantastic lands. They're great in Modern, and the reason they're great is because you can guarantee they'll always come in untapped for at least the first 3 turns, which is what you need in Modern. Modern is such a fast format that you can't afford to just go tap land, tap land, tap land. You have to play some untapped lands, and just starting your game out with a bunch of tap lands means that you're probably a turn behind whatever the opponent's doing, which can be life or death in Modern, especially with decks like Death Shadow being as popular as they are right now, and Dredge, like these really fast blistering decks. You can't be behind a turn. Botanical Sanctum is the blue-green one. These will probably be good in Standard, and I think they're probably better to use than the check lands or whatever people are calling them from Shadows, the ones where you have to reveal a card from your hand to have it come in untapped. And the reason I say that is because you can guarantee, if I'm playing red-white humans or something like that, I can guarantee that Inspire Advantage will always come in untapped those first 3 turns, which is just as important for Standard as it is for Modern. And those check lands, the problem with the check lands is that they will almost always come in tapped in the late game. These will too. After turn 3, they're always going to come in tapped, so keep that in mind. But the hand lands will always come in tapped later in the game when you're not holding a lot in your hand, when you've already played out your hand. But they also have the chance of just, if you have a bad open in hand, they might even still come in tapped early in the game, and I don't love them for that reason. I don't think these will straight up replace them, but I think these will be very popular in Standard. And keep in mind that the Painlands from Origins are rotating when Kaladesh comes out, so these will take their place pretty easily. Now, the Painlands were also important because they gave us an easy source of colorless mana in addition to colored mana, but assuming you're not running some Eldrazi deck or some colorless Matters deck, these will do a great job in Standard, and I'm sure they'll have some sort of price tag on them. I think every single one of the Scars of Mirrodin lands is $10 or more for a single copy. Rightfully so, they are fantastic. Let's see. I believe there's about 3 or 4 that I saw from yesterday. Yeah. All right. So moving on to Aerial Responder. Now, I'm going to be honest here. When I saw this, I thought of the pun Aerial Vampire Whitehawk, and I thought I was super clever about it. And then I watched the Mana Source's video on this set of cards, this set of spoilers, and unfortunately he also said Vampire Whitehawk, and he recorded and released his video before I'm recording this, so for the sake of consistency I'll give that one to him, but I thought it was clever. Vampire Whitehawk, it's just a very good sized body on a flyer with some other relevant keywords. So 1 double white for a 2/3 flying vigilance lifelink dwarf soldier. And remember, there are cards that care about dwarves. We have at least a dwarf lord. let alone there might be like some sort of equipment or something that only works with dwarves. But this is fantastic. Like, potentially good in standard. Like, the stats are just good for a 3-drop, and the keywords, like, there's enough of them that it's just a potentially rare value card. Same as Vampire Nighthawk. That's why the comparison's being made. They're not the same exact card, but they have the same kind of feel to them, where they're just overloaded with abilities on a 3-drop flyer. And in limited, this is like a slam dunk first pick. If your rare is not a bomb, like, this is what you look for second. Like, easily, this could easily be like top 5 uncommons already, and we haven't even seen the rest of the set. It's just that good. So why is it that good? Well, a 2-power flyer, like, the basis for a flyer is something like, for a decent playable flyer, is something like a 3-mana 2/2 flyer. That's a decent card. So like your Shadow Gliders or your Spectral Shepherds or something like that. Just on the base, a 3-mana 2/2 flyer is a decent playable card. Well, this is a 2/3 flyer for 3. Sure, it's a little bit harder to cast, but not only does it have flying, but it has vigilance, meaning it can attack and you still have that blocker back. And then it has lifelink, meaning that if you attack, you're gaining 2 life, and if you have to block with it, you gain 2 more life. So potentially 4 life per turn cycle is pretty good. And at the very least, like, this is just a decent body with lifelink. Even if the vigilance doesn't matter really much, like, the lifelink is pretty good here. So this is an all-around fantastic, strong card. And the fact that there's a dwarf lord means, like, you'll pick this super high. You'll pick the red-white chick super high. I don't remember her name, unfortunately. But yeah, very good card. And then Ceremonious Rejection. I was about to ceremoniously reject this card when I saw it, but then, you know, the juice start flowing and you start thinking about what this counters. It's a 1 blue instant counter target colorless spell, and we are coming out of the back of 2 colorless themed sets. Battle for Zendikar having all of the devoid creatures plus Ulamog, plus, you know, nobody plays Kozilek, but Kozilek. This counters your Reality Smashers, your Matter Reshapers, your Thought Knot Seers. And remember, Thought Knot Seer is an enter the battlefield trigger, not a cast trigger. So countering that for 1 mana seems fantastic. This counters your Emrakuls. This counters all of the emerge creatures, every single one of them. Unfortunately, that you still get the cast trigger, so I can see some sort of split between this and Summary Dismissal if you're trying to sideboard intentionally against cards like Emrakul. But the fact that you can just hold this up for 1 blue mana, and something like Summary Dismissal costs 3 or 4 for the typical counter spells, this is just really, really good. And I've heard people say that this is good in other formats too, and it could be. Like, you can counter, you know, Chalice of the Void, and Engineered Explosives, any sort of artifact in Modern, and then even Legacy and Vintage. Vintage is especially where a lot of people's turn 1 involve playing Moxes and Black Lotuses and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't play Vintage, but it is very artifact heavy, and this just counters it. Like, it counters everything. Not to mention, like, Kaladesh itself is an artifact themed set, so even in limited, this can be used as a sideboard card against, like, these vehicles and other colorless artifacts. Keep in mind there are some colored artifacts floating around. Are there colored artifacts? They're colored Eldrazi, but I don't know that there are colored artifacts. But anyway, very good sideboard tech in pretty much any format you can think of, including limited. Normally, I wouldn't run cards like this in the main board. They're kind of akin to, like, Plummet or, you know, Naturalize effects, where they could be dead cards, but they're probably not going to be dead cards. So I'd prefer to keep it in the sideboard when it comes to sealed and draft and stuff like that. But it is there, and you know, it's the type of card you might want to hold on to as many copies as you can get, because it could find a place in older formats. Looks like I accidentally skipped a guy here. Oval Chase Daredevil is 3 and a black for a 4/2 human pilot. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Oval Chase Daredevil from your graveyard to your hand. This is a decent card. 4/2s for 4 are, like, traditionally pretty bad, but the fact that you can, and the reason for that is because they trade lower. Your opponent's 2/2 for 2 is often going to trade for something like this, and that's not really a good investment of mana. But the fact that this is a recurrent threat that you can get back from your graveyard pretty easily, in an artifact-themed set, you're going to be able to get this back a good number of times throughout the course of a game, and then trade multiple times without losing, a lot of actual tempo or a lot of card advantage or anything like that. So it's pretty decent. This is very similar to an older card. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a ghoul. I think it was a 4/1 for 4, and whenever a swamp enters the battlefield, you can get it back from your graveyard to your hand. But same kind of idea, a recurring threat that's not like super powerful. Sorry, that's my alarm telling me to wake up, and it is unsuccessful. But this card is decent. It is an uncommon too, and it is a pilot, but doesn't have anything to do directly with vehicles. So interesting there. But other than that, this is a decent card. I don't know that it's like a super high pick. Another cool thing about it is like if there's a repeatable discard outlet in this set, then or some sort of benefit for discarding cards, then you can use that to your advantage and just get this guy back and loop him with discard effects. Essence Extraction is excuse me. Essence Extraction, the game day participation promo, looks like, is 1 double black for an instant that says Essence Extraction deals 3 damage to target creature and you gain 3 life. That's a pretty good card. This is definitely a slam dunk card and limited, like just kills, half of your opponent's deck probably, and gains you some life, be an instant speed. The double black is, like a little bit harder to cast, but doable in most formats. You'll have this up by turn 3, and if you have to wait a turn and do it on turn 4 or 5, you're still probably going to get something out of it. But this is essentially a lightning helix in black. The only difference is that, besides color requirements and mana cost and everything else about it, is you can't direct this to a player, so you can't hit a planeswalker with this either. It only hits creatures, so a little limited there. I hear a lot of people arguing about whether this is better than Murder in Standard, and Murder is like obviously going to kill things more often, like it kills anything, but Murder doesn't gain you life, and when you're playing a slow deck, when you're playing some sort of control deck, gaining life is pretty important, or making sure your life total stays high is pretty important. So even if Essence Extraction isn't like a direct replacement for Murder, you could still see this very often in sideboards against, low early game creature decks, your white weenie decks, stuff like that. And this could be an easy swap for Murder. Same mana cost, fits the same place in the curve, but deals the same kind of things. If your opponent's playing white weenie, then 3 damage is going to kill almost everything they have, depending on what version of the deck they're playing. So, this could be better than Murder in a lot of cases. And yeah, it's pretty sweet. So I also hear a lot of people complaining that this is a black spell that deals damage instead of losing life, but those have existed before. Like, that's not a new thing, so not too worried about that. And then this is the last card I've seen up to this point. So anything after this is going to be just completely fresh for both of us, or me only, probably. But 1 mana equipment. This is Inventors Goggles. Equipped creature gets +1/+2 whenever an Artificer enters the battlefield under your control. You may attach Inventors Goggles to it, and the equip cost is 2. So this is not very good. At all. It's just the boost is like nice, but it's not significant enough to like justify a spot in your deck. If for some reason you're running a ton of Artificers, I like it a lot more. Just having a permanent +1/+2 on a creature entering the battlefield seems great, but I really want the free equips to make this useful. Equipping this for 2 just seems like, a waste of mana. Like, I could be doing other things for 2 mana or 3 mana in a turn and stuff like that. But if there's a critical mass of Artificers in your deck, then go right ahead. I like free equips. So if this, rustles your jimmies, go for it. But some people like equipment more than others. I'm not a big fan of it. It's one of my least favorite card types to play with, just because it's usually not worth the mana investment. I do want to point out I've seen up to about 4 Artificers already in the set, and one of the significant ones that works with this is the green game day promo. I don't remember the name of the card, but it is an Artificer, and when it attacks, all of your attacking creatures get +X equal to that attacking creature's power. So just being able to give it a little bit of a boost here and some protection on that +2 toughness seems pretty nice. So that's an incentive to draft a card like this, but other than that, not really seeing the appeal of it. So now moving into new territory, and it looks like we've got about 6 cards here to talk about. So first one, wow, look at that body. All right, Demolition Stomper is a 6 mana vehicle. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so those pesky death touch creatures aren't getting you. Crew 5, so that means you can tap any number of creatures with total power 5 to make this a creature for the turn. And it's a 10/7. That is huge. That is gigantic, but doesn't have any sort of evasion. There's no trample on it. I don't know if we've seen any cards in this set that give trample, but I think that's what's lacking here. It's an uncommon, probably just because the body is huge. But remember, you're tapping down a good bit of power and putting it into this. So this could easily just be like a 5/7 without the crew ability, just a 5/7 artifact creature. And also you are able to attack with your other creatures. So this is kind of like putting an eggs in all your basket type thing, going bigger than the opponent. So if your opponent's building up a board where you can't, alpha strike them, maybe you turn all of your creatures into profit here and attack with this instead. And if you can give this trample, it's probably going to deal a ton of damage. I do like that first little ability there because it does mean it's not going to be easily chumped. Doesn't mean it's going to be ganged up on very easily. Your opponent's very likely to have some creatures that can't block this, and like I said, death touch creatures are usually a little bit lower. I think there's already been one death touch creature in this format, and it's a rare, but it's a 2/3, so that can't block this. And that's how it usually works with death touch creatures, but this is just big enough to probably make the cut anyway. But it is a 6 mana 10/7 in ideal circumstances, but Crew 5 is tapping down a lot of power on board. So I don't know. It seems good. It seems good, but could use a little bit of work there. I need some convincing on that. All right, translation incoming. Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Awesome name. I love it. All right, so this is so this is a colored artifact. It's a white artifact. And in fact, the green one was an artifact as well. In fact, that was a Gearhulk too. So now I'm suspecting there's going to be a cycle of 5 mana Gearhulks. Remember, the green one was double green and 3 ETB, put 4 counters on some things if you want. This is Vigilant with a period. Wait, but is that period there? Has that always been there? Is that something new? Anyway, it's a mythic as well. It's a 4/5 for 5, and it says when it enters the battlefield, each player chooses from among the non-land permanents he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker, then sacrifices the rest. Wow. Okay, so this is Tragic Arrogance on a stick, right? Yep, that's what this is. This is Tragic Arrogance on a 4/5 body for the same mana cost. And one neat thing that's already standing out to me here is this is an artifact, so it's very likely that you'll be able to keep this plus a creature, choosing that for your creature and your artifact, whereas if your opponent doesn't have any artifacts, they're down to probably just 1 creature, and each player chooses from among. And another thing to note here, I believe, in fact, Tragic Arrogance is right down here. Let me make sure. For each player you choose. Yeah, so with Tragic Arrogance, you choose for both players. It looks like for this Gearhulk, each player chooses their own stuff. So you're not going to be able to mess up your opponent's field and leave them with a 1/1. They're going to choose their best creature, best planeswalker, so on and so forth. Not very often that you get enchantments out of the deal here, but yeah, you could, with Tragic Arrogance, you could pick like your opponent's clue artifact, and then they would sack all their other artifacts, which doesn't come up often, but this is very strong. It has Vigilance, so it's getting in there too. It's very nicely costed, so if this is a whole cycle, like this is probably what we're expecting, like 5 mana big bodies with some really strong effect. Obviously limited game winners. Both these Gearhulks so far, the green and the white one, have been fantastic. Both mythic, so you won't have to play against them well, and that is a very strong effect in limited. This will very likely have constructed applications, if not in the main board of white decks, then at least in the sideboard, because this sort of effect does hose a lot of decks. Like Tragic Arrogance became very, very popular when the format became all about like going wide and putting a bunch of creatures. So Bant companies, spirits, humans, like they all fold to this sort of effect very, very easily. And you're the one left with the 4 or 5 vigilance, so you're getting in there. Pretty cool. Also, that art is awesome. Like there are little people on top of this thing's hammer or whatever you want to call it. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the cycle, if it is in fact a full cycle. Like the new Titans, is that what we're going for here? Gearhulk Guide, or the Guide of Gearhulk, is 2 and a green for a 3/2 elf. For 2 and a green, target creature you control can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. Decent. This sort of effect has been in limited a number of times anyway, and it is a nice little mana sink. Like, just helps your creatures get in there without being chumped or without being traded with. Pretty nice on himself too, in that like if your opponent wants to block him after you've used the ability on himself, they're going to have to actually trade with a relevant creature instead of just like a 2/1 or something like that. So pretty decent. It's got decent stats on its own. It is an uncommon. Looks like its creature type is Explorer, Elf Explorer. Unless that whole thing means elf in Spanish or whatever language this is, but I don't believe it does. So is Explorer a creature type already? I think it is. I think it is. Larger than life. 1 and a green. For a sorcery, target creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample until end of turn. So it's about to jump the gun and say strictly better Titanic growth, but it's not because it's a sorcery. Oftentimes this will just be really good anyway. +4/+4 and trample is a lot of damage for 2 mana. Like this is the type of thing that people just go hard in. They take all of these types of cards, but being a sorcery does hurt it. Like same kind of deal as Phytoblast from Dragon's Maze or whatever set. Like that was just +5/+5 for 2 mana, which is huge for that mana cost. But being sorcery means that your opponent can plan around it, except sometimes your opponent can't plan around it. Sometimes trample is just enough to get in there, and sometimes +4 is enough damage to close out a game. So keep in mind that this card exists, but you won't have to play around it. This is also the type of card I always warn people about this when it comes to pre-release. Read your cards. Like you're gonna look at this. There are gonna be players who look at this, try to do it at instant speed, and nope, you can't do that, sir. Sorry. So keep that in mind. Pretty cool art too. I love it. Sorcery speed, Titanic growth with trample. Neat. Multiform Wonder, Robocop. Alright, we got a rare here. This is 5 mana, 3/3, artifact creature construct. It is a rare, Multiform Wonder. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy counters. That's quite a bit. That seems like quite a bit. Pay an energy. It gains your choice of flying, vigilance, or lifelink until end of turn. Okay. Pay energy. Multiform worker gets +2 or -2/+2 until end of turn. This is pretty neat, and this is the type of card that if you have constant ways of getting energy, or adding energy to your energy pool, so to speak, like this is pretty good. Like it takes, it takes a good bit of energy to be able to like pull off everything you want with this, because what you really want is to be able to give it all 3 abilities: attack, gain 3 life, have it back to block, and then still have the ability to give it like lifelink and -2/+2 so that it can block and still gain you life. But this is a very versatile card, and I appreciate versatility in my cards. If you have a way to generate lots of energy, and again, I'm looking for a common here that just like taps, add 1 energy to your thing. Like that's what I'm looking for. Even like maybe an uncommon that adds 2 or something like that for a tap ability. That would be perfect. A way to constantly generate energy out of a single card. And I think this is a slam dunk card after that point. On its own, it seems like a very good card, but not like a busted bomb or anything like that, since it does require you to have a constant stream of energy to be super, super good. But this thing can attack for 5 in the air with lifelink, and that's pretty significant. Like it can close out a game pretty quickly, and that only costs 2 energy, so it doesn't take much to put that 3rd energy in and gain lifelink and have a huge life swing over your opponent. Like -5 them, +5 you is pretty game changing in most situations. Alright, last card for now. Pia Noir. Interesting. Isn't she dead? I'm not reading the story, so I guess just Kieran is dead? I don't know. If you know the story, tell me why Pia Noir is alive, because I don't know. But another legendary creature, quite a few from this set so far. Pia Noir is 2 and a red for a 2/2 human Artificer, legendary creature at rare. Artificer, there you go, goggles. When PN Noir enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. For 1 in a red, target artifact creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And for 1, sacrifice an artifact, target creature can't block this turn. Alright, so an efficient little body here. So essentially you're getting 3 power, 3 toughness for 3 mana, which seems pretty decent. And you have the ability to give artifacts fire breathing, like really expensive fire breathing, which seems okay, not particularly busted or anything like that. And that last ability is decent. This can help you close out a game if you have a way to constantly create artifacts. Sack an artifact, target creature can't block this turn. So I don't know, Whirler Maker or something like that. If you have a way to pump out a stream of artifacts on the cheap and still have mana left over, and you're still an aggressive deck that can, you know, afford to sacrifice artifacts and get your creatures in there, then this seems pretty good. I'm gonna be honest, like, this seems a little underwhelming for a legendary creature. I'm reading this mostly as 2/2 for 3 that makes a 1/1 flyer, and that's good. Like, that's decent, but we've seen that kind of effect at common before, or you know, at the very most uncommon. And I don't think these other abilities, especially that second ability, the fire breathing type ability, doesn't seem like that could be just 1 red, couldn't it? Or maybe not, I don't know. With Thopters and stuff, maybe that's a little bit too strong. I don't really know, but it seems just like really, really costly. And the last ability can be relevant, so I'm not going to dismiss that. But a little underwhelmed by this creature. Definitely, I don't see this as a commander for mono red decks at all. But it's neat, and there's obviously some sort of story implications I need to check up on. Since I was not expecting this. I was under the impression the Noirs were dead. But anyway, there you go. That's spoilers for today. Make sure that there haven't been any spoiled in the last 15 seconds. Alright, yeah, a lot of talking, a lot of hearing me talk about cards that I am evaluating on the fly here. But things I'm excited about, Gearhulks, these cards are, so far these cards are sweet. Like, super pushed in power, constructed playable, and just limited game winners. Like, very, very cool. And yeah, I mean, the rest of the cards are still pretty sweet. A lot of cards, you know, you've got cards going back to older formats. You've got cards that are being pushed for standard, it looks like, you know, your limited game breakers. And then the lands here, the land cycle is fantastic. Very, very cool of Wizards to finally complete this cycle. I know people have been wanting it for a long time, and I know it's very popular in Modern. So cards like this can definitely bring certain Modern strategies into the limelight here. Ones that I know, like Abzan, for instance, uses a lot man lands and things like that, and just takes a lot of damage off of its mana base because it doesn't have lands like this currently to come in untapped reliably. So these could be a huge player in things like Abzan and I don't know, Jund, maybe not Jund. Definitely not Jund. But yeah, there you go. And Panharmonicon, like, there you go. That's your job. List the most busted thing you can think of with Panharmonicon. Comment below. Panharmonicon, what can you do with it? Honestly, like, it just blows my mind. It's crazy. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. That's quite a few cards. Hopefully, there will probably be more, like, as soon as I post this video, but or start loading this video. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. My name's Timothy. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Please comment. I love talking about new cards here. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.